Hey, what's going on, guys? This is a trade recap from today. Sorry, I haven't really been posting these. I've just honestly been in a zone lately. I feel like my price reads have been excellent, and I've been explaining them well, so there hasn't really been a need. But I wanted to go over this one because, I mean, there was a lot of different things I included on this, and I was trying to explain it to you guys. But this is an untouched chart, so hopefully, everything lines up with what I was showing you guys. But reasons I did this, right? If we take a look, just to start on this left side, right, there was a lot of imbalances that really kind of started to show in the chart before we even got to today's session, right? We had this imbalance range all throughout here that was never really traded in, right? I mean, we can just take it from like here maybe to here. Technically, it's this entire range all the way up, right? So like technically, it's that. But if you take a look, right, I figured this range needed a little bit more trading to really fill out the chart, right? And the fact that we had gapped up overnight and we created a secondary bear gap. Let me add this in really quickly. We ended up getting another one. Or I guess this is technically a bull gap, but here, right, we ended up having two ranges that almost overlapped each other. And you guys can see this area is pretty barren. Didn't really have too much trading in this spot. It was pretty imbalanced, right? And then the fact that we got a secondary imbalance with a bull gap over the top, I felt like we had to trade down. I really was expecting a move back down to fill the bull gap before a rally up, and I started to get different confirmations that really added and feeded my bias, right? If you guys remember how I got these green lines here, pre-market, right? We had a pre-market dark pool print down to 472.04, which is the bottom of my green line. And then intraday, as we incrementally started to kind of make our way up to my resistance, we started to see heavy, heavy bids at 472.45, right? They were trying to bid the market down to essentially get fills in the bull gap for a mark back up. I think it was a total of 1.7 billion, 1.8, but that much money with this low of volume going into a quote unquote bond auction, it's a good reason to kind of get price moving in a direction of a willing buyer or willing seller, and there was a lot of money waiting to be bought up right around this spot here, guys, right around the bull gap. So what ended up happening was this was making its way up towards my resistance. How did I get this resistance? It was pretty simple, right? It was at the top of the imbalance range, right? We also had our close from yesterday. I just basically rounded it up to the top of the wick at 475.06. And then if you guys remember yesterday, I also posted this at 474.88, 474.80. There was another dark pool print where they were trying to sell or unload a ton of their position. So I was looking for this little range here to act as like a mini resistance that I was willing to short, right? And then look for the push down, the aggressive move down towards their bids, and then I was going to flip long here. I was trying to double whammy it essentially. We had this very clear higher low trend line, but once again on very low volume. This is typically reminiscent of like a rising wedge. And it was very, very close to one. It didn't structurally look like one, but the fact that you had these higher highs that weren't expanding far, right? Typically, what you want to see for a higher high is price expand much further from your previous high. This indicates that they're able to push out price a lot higher. That there's willing buyers. There's not that constriction of price, and we can also see that through volume that there wasn't much interest on the high, right? So that's why I ended up taking the short here. I only took one contract initially. I was thinking we can get like a huge move. Unfortunately, it didn't move as aggressive as I would have liked, although this bar was heavy. But I was thinking we could maybe take contracts from 35 cents to maybe 500 bucks. Didn't happen that way. It's all good though, because we did get ads. But I ended up adding initially up here, and then it started to break down, right? And then I took another ad somewhere on the breakdown, right? I probably should have waited for this secondary arrow. I did take another ad here, by the way, but I was only looking to put in about $1,000 into this trade. I didn't feel super comfortable just because of the low vol, but also the fact that we were going into a bond auction. You never know what could happen despite looking at the chart. So I like to play it careful, and if it's ever around news, I do like to trade level to level, right? I just try not to overthink it, and I make sure I know exactly where I'm going to lose, how much I'm going to lose, etc. I like the risk here, right? But yeah, I ended up getting more ads somewhere here, and then it started to break down, but I didn't like the volume, and I was like, okay, screw it, guys. I'm just going to mitigate half of this. I ended up taking, trims. My entry was technically 3.5 up here at the one contract, but I added in at like 30 or something like that. So these ended up being, I think I had like, what was it? $1,000 with a 30-cent average, right? And then it started to break down, and then as it was making its way back up, I was like, okay, let me just trim this down to half. So I took about $500 off, only had $500 in the position, and then it ended up making its way up, and then we saw a very, very clear and distinct lower high, right? We had a very, very weak higher high that instantly faded, popped up, lower high, and then we were going into the bond auction. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna add into this again. So I did add a little bit extra of money. I think I added like another $200 on this. My average was still around 0.3, and then clearly we had the massive breakdown. Traditionally, I would have liked to have seen on this candle here, right, move back into that spot. And this is what I was actually waiting for, was a quick aggressive candle down, right, and then some kind of retracement back up into it. So if this would have gone like this, hit that, I would have reshorted it here, and this technically would have been your lower high, and we would have looked for a lower low. We didn't necessarily get that. So if you guys were, maybe a couple of you guys, I think, were confused of what I was looking at, you want to get that quick aggressive candle that spikes down, that creates the fair value gap. You look for the retracement back up to collect those orders, and then you can go short. And then, right, then you could risk the high. That's what I was looking for, but unfortunately I did have to take it a little bit earlier. But fortunately, right, we didn't really go red on this position at all. This big drop here, I wish we had a little bit more volume. I think there wasn't a lot of volume because the real play, right, the real purpose of the sell-off wasn't to sell it off. It was actually just to buy, right? These were going to bidders down here. But this went like 120%, 140% really quickly. And as always, you want to try to trim into these strength candles. So I took a bulk of my position off at these lows here, and I just held a couple runners, right? And we were looking for it to kind of push down into this bull gap down here, potentially further to the 472 flat, which is where the pre-market dark pool print was. It didn't happen that way, but it did get down to the 472.45, almost to the penny. And these were huge buyers, guys. Like I said, I think they were adding throughout the day. What I saw, or what I counted initially, was like 1.7 billion, and just needed one touch of it. Really, it just touched it, kind of consolidated here a little bit above the level, and then you guys can see just how much money pushed this back up, right? They were able to get their fills, remark, and sell at the highs. I had this one marked for a while. Remember, they were trying to sell, and I put it in the chat as well for you guys that need to go back and reflect on how accurate these are. They were trying to sell at 476.80. Right? That's where they were looking to sell that position that they probably accumulated down here. And look where it went to towards the end of the day, right? And it's also crazy the fact that we broke through this dark pool level as well as the close, broke through, and what did it do? It retested and kept rallying. But at this point, I was already playing golf, but really, really beautiful chart. Good example of the market really trying to create a balanced range. If you take a look at this entire range now, right, if we just kind of take it from, let's just go here, right, this makes a little bit more sense. We'll go here to here. Actually, honestly, it should be like right here, right? This range became balanced in the morning, as you can see from this gap down here. So, if we just kind of pull this up and cheat it, this whole range now became balanced, right? It kind of pulled down, rebalanced, and that's where these wicks are. You guys notice how it didn't really close below the top of this balance range here. So really, really key example of just kind of understanding the market is very efficient. The market is well oiled. It wants to balance out charts, and big players will sit at where the balancing should happen, and they will bid clean levels, right? This is how the market does become balanced, is because people are willing to buy good levels. They're not just chasing highs. They're not, doing anything like that. They're being very, very patient. So this was a really good trade. I do wish I would have alerted what I took down here. I took the 480s for February 2nd. I only took one contract, but I probably should have stayed around a little bit longer once this sold off and gone a full position size down here, and just knowing how much money was waiting, because this ended up being like a 40% win. But yeah, that's all I wanted to showcase for you guys. I will kind of conclude this here, and then go over the weekly or the nightly scan tonight, and then do a weekly scan as well a little bit early. So hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time.